Hi, welcome to my channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I'm gonna talk about more what's happening in Ukraine, generally based, and something I forgot to say when I made the video regarding wokeness and cancel culture. But the focus would be mostly on the events that are currently happening in Ukraine, on the Russian-Ukraine conflict line. If you are interested, please continue watching. Welcome back to the channel. As I've stated in the introduction, I've missed something when I last made the video about cancel culture. And it's important that I sort of try to prevent any misunderstanding on what I tried to say. Now, my theory still is the cancel culture, the wokeness, the LGBT stories, the transgender. All these are sort of modern developments from as they have developed out of our social media, our access to internet, our cell phones that give us a lot of contact with the internet, and the subsequent bad things. Well, there are good things to the internet and there's good things to social media, but unfortunately the wokeness and the cancel culture are the bad things. But today I would like to talk about propaganda. The propaganda is a subset of this wokeness and cancel culture. And one shouldn't confuse the two matters with that. The propaganda, people that do the propaganda, who wants to control the narrative, use the principles of wokeness, cancel culture, the easiness by which people can criticize other people, and allows basically idiots to all have their own opinions and can criticize anybody sort of anonymous. And if they want to have a campaign against somebody who has a certain narrative, then that presents a unique opportunity or tool for these type of people to suppress that narrative. So if you see people that are actually taking a subject or a person or a country like Russia and they start to criticize it, then you shouldn't see it as the phenomena of cancel culture and wokeness as alone. You should see it in the context of propaganda. And it actually amazes me that a lot of people cannot see it for what it is. You know, I've watched some other videos. I started to now look at some German videos and so on, YouTube. And especially there's one guy called Thomas Roper and Anti-Spiegel. Now, if you can understand German, you can watch it on YouTube and that's not a problem. But in one of the videos, and that's why I actually stimulated this video, is that in one of the videos, they were discussing the report by Seymour Hersh regarding the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline. And if you looked at what he said and so on, said, but nobody in the media, the Western media, is discussing this terrorist act. Nobody's even asking questions. Nobody is really addressing the issue of this huge international terrorist act, because that is what it is, by definition of what is a terrorist act. And for me, I thought, but the answer is fairly obvious. The media is not independent. And if you haven't noticed that, then, and I'm not sure where you were in the last 3-4 years during the COVID era. The media in the West is captured. Whether I'm talking about South Africa, whether I'm talking America or Europe, or basically all where the Western worlds have, they control the media. Even in Japan, Taiwan, the Middle Eastern countries, South America, if they are in control of Western oligarchs or money, then they have a certain task, and that task is to spread propaganda. We all know about the principle of fake news. And how many times has the BBC been caught out distributing fake news? But it has ever suffered the consequences? No. Because it is a controlled narrative. There's a propaganda, there's a story that has to be told. Now, if you listen also to Biden or Blinken or anybody really in power, they all say the same thing. They talk the narrative, they talk the propaganda. They tell the story as they were instructed to keep talking, even if it sounds ridiculous. It's like when you say 200,000 Russians have been killed, Russia is losing, and you as a pro-Russian people question that, or as a neutral person question that narrative, then you find out it's a ridiculous type of numbers. But in spite of that, the politicians and the people in power still try to convince you that that is the truth. And that is fake news in all aspects. But it is the propaganda, the narrative that must be kept intact. It's like they always say, the more you repeat the story, the more the people believe it. And the more crazy the story is, the more the people will believe it. I think they always refer to Goebbels in the Second World War, the propaganda of the Nazi machine. If it's a small event, people will mistrust it. But if it's a big event, then they will believe it. And that is the whole problem, the whole thing with the world's Western narrative media. It's the same thing. That means if you listen to when they don't want to say I say something that they don't like. I say the truth, what's really happening there, and it doesn't fit the narrative, then there will be a media campaign against me. There will be people outside that will criticize me and belittle me and try to cancel me. That is what they are trying to do with Seymour Hersh. He's an old man, and he doesn't know what he's talking about and so on. But there's one crucial item that is happening, or that you should listen to, which is absent. One of the most common methods of the Western media and the politicians, and it is obvious that they use it, is that when they deny something of which they are guilty. We can look at the Bucha or at let's take the Nord Stream. No, we didn't do it. Russia did it. But common sense, ask yourself, why would Russia blow up its own infrastructure? No, it's some original nuclear plant. No, it's the Russians that bomb it themselves. It's not the Ukrainians. No. But why would the Russians bomb their own troops that are stationed at Zaporizhzhia? Why? So this is denial. You accuse your opponent of what you're doing yourself. It's like, hey, let's take this latest treaty, the START treaty. So Russia has now decided, no, they're not going to allow the Americans to come and inspect their website. But before that, the Americans already refused the Russians to go and inspect it. So the Americans are the first people that actually violated the terms of the START agreement. But what you will find is that they now accuse the Russians of doing it. Again, you accuse your opponent of stuff that you are yourself doing. That is obfuscating, or if that's a correct English word for it, of the matter, and confusing people on what to decide what is the truth and what is a lie. And the point I'm trying to make here is that you see no counter arguments or any publication of the Seymour Hersh article. And this should give you some form of believability in his article. I'm not totally 100% after his story, but because there are some stuff like that puts me a little bit doubt inside, especially the amount of security that went into the operation, which was totally lacking, in my opinion, because there were a lot of people that could spill the beans. And at the time of this operation, you don't allow anybody really, or any danger of any hope, or no, any chance of getting this known to the public, to the world. So you limit your amount of people that are involved, and you make sure that the people that are involved are absolutely on your side and will never become a whistleblower. And this is not what happened. Now that, unfortunately, is the only thing that really puts me again a big question mark after the article. Not about Simon Hirsch, but whether he was not bamboozled himself. There is a story about Theresa May SMS, but I don't have a lot of credibility in that. I have more credibility in the information of the Russians when they investigated or located these people that did the attack on the Kerch Bridge. And then they found out that the British were involved in the planning of that stuff. That has a little bit more credibility. So I do have my doubts about the Hirsch story, but it doesn't matter. The Russians have now went to the Security Council and they're going to demand a formal international investigation. Let's see what's happening there. But again, just for the sake, remember, the Western media is not talking about that. Why? Because they have no alternative to the narrative. They have to, and they hope that by keeping quiet, people will forget about that. And there's even the narrative that the blow up of the balloons was basically a diversion of attention. And by the way, just for the sakes, if you haven't noticed about that, Raptor 22, was it the Raptor, no? F-22, he located the target and he fired a missile. And the first missile missed. And the first missile cost $430,000. And the reason is the radar couldn't lock onto his target. And then he had to come back, and then he had to shoot a second missile, another $430,000, and then destroyed a $13 or $16 amateur balloon. So I think one has to put a question about the technology of the Americans and the American fighters itself. But that's in any case a long time under doubt. Excuse me. That's why I'm always referring to the story as how can the pro-Russian commentators listen to the media, the Western media, and then try to reference them or quote them when it fits their narrative. How much credibility do you achieve from selective selecting of information? You know they mostly lie. So why are the people doing it? I don't put a lot of faith in that type of information. So this is the little piece I wanted to actually add about wokeness. And wokeness and cancel culture is just a flow out or development from the fact that we have social media and the internet and easy access to social media and easy access to the internet. But it is the propaganda and the people that generate the narrative that abuse this principle, which is in any case already negative, and they make it much more worse in order to suppress the true narrative and the true facts and trying to present their story. You know, Orwell 1982 or whatever novel, same principle. But let's come back to the Russian-Ukrainian front. If you look at, there's also a constant narrative presented by pro-Russians that basically the West is running out of ammunition and weapons. And I have to semi-agree with him, but not fully. We can take now the German Leopard tanks. So the other NATO countries like Denmark and Netherlands and Norway and Poland and I think it was Italy or Spain, can't remember. But in any case, we're pushing Germany to give them permission to deliver their Panzer Leopard tanks to Ukraine. And they were pushing it. And it was even so bad that Annabella Baerbock, the foreign minister of Germany, encouraged these countries to put pressure on Scholz. And they said they will all supply Panther Leopard tanks. Why am I so with Panther Leopard tanks? Don't make the mistakes. It's just unfortunately my capabilities of the English right. The point here is that finally America bamboozled Germany in providing the Leopard tanks. Oh yeah, the Americans going to supply 31 Abrams tanks. But Germany said, all right, if you supply them, then we can release the Leopard tanks. And then when Germany was ready, then the Americans said, no. It's only going to take a year. We still have to build them. It's like catching the Germans offside. But then Germany already had made a commitment. And then the French that promised the Leclerc tanks said, no, we can't, we're not going to deliver it anymore. All right. And suddenly, all the countries became quiet around Germany. Nobody was actually preparing to send the Leopards to Ukraine. And then I read this article, is that somebody investigated, they talked to some of the defense people of these countries, and the politicians thought that the Leopards were all fine and they could deliver it. So the politicians had all intentions of, in say the Netherlands and Norway and Spain, Italy, which one ever it was, to deliver these tanks. But when they went to the military commander said, listen here, sorry, these tanks are not available. They are inoperable. They are not in working condition. So now, they can't deliver the Leopard tanks as is. They first have to repair them and get them operational and ready for the battle. And this has been a common thread or a common story in all the European countries. Is that the military were not capable of doing it. I remember I read an article about the German Air Force. They had something, I think, 114 Tornadoes, but only 4 were operational because these 4, there was a problem on the wingtip and the communication of a pod that was was fitted to the wingtip, and the communication wasn't working. So only 4 of these could actually fly and be operational of 114 of 117 Tornadoes. It's like the Germans find out, but they don't have enough ammunition they have for 2 days. The British find out they have 2 days worth of ammunition. They promised weapons to Ukraine that the German army never had and so on. They don't have the manpower. They thought they had more. The whole military structure in Europe is actually was underfunded and hollowed out through the last 20 years or 30 years. So the countries in Europe don't have armies and they don't have the military equipment. It doesn't matter how you look at it. The politicians can promise whatever they have, but in reality, that's totally something different. No, I cannot say the same thing for Americans because the Americans is a much larger army and has spent a lot of money throughout the years and has done a lot of military ventures, attacked a lot of countries, so they should be up the ball. But the European countries have neglected their armies willingly and didn't realize they're going to be subject to the authority of the biggest military bloc, and that's America, and that is what happened. So it's quite funny in terms of sending all these Leopards. Yeah. Anyways, the other side of the story is that, well, we had the first armament of the Ukrainians. And actually, by the way, nobody actually talked about this, and I wasn't even aware of that, but I heard it from this Thomas Roper. Remember the American contract or deal with Ukraine that says lend and lease, like they did with the Russians in the Second World War? America will lend or lease the equipment to Ukraine, and then Ukraine has to either return them or has to replace them or pay for it. Remember that one? It was actually came into effect in April of last year. And we all thought that that would be, that was a decision by Congress to finally approve this thing and get weapons supplied to Ukraine. But then I actually found out, and I verified it, that that proposal was submitted already, either the 14th or the 17th of January of 2022, meaning before the Russian SMO started. Was it submitted by a certain senator to Congress to be approved? So at that stage, they were already contemplating sending military equipment to Ukraine. Maybe in the anticipation that Russia will invade Ukraine, which was obvious from the start when Russia submitted their security guarantee proposal in December. Well, that one I believe is 17th, and NATO and America refused it. So it looks like the Americans were, so it wasn't an unprovoked military action by America. It was a planned enticement by the Americans to get Russian military involved in Ukraine. Well, that was just a little bit of a interesting point that I found out. But coming back to the whole story about the SMO. Again, now the narrative goes on. Yes, the Ukrainians cannot win. That's not the narrative in the West. No, narrative in the pro-Russian side, quoting or assessing that in the Western sphere, NATO sphere, the NATO sphere is now contemplating forcing or withdrawing from the conflict, cutting off the funds and army to military equipment to Ukraine, and forcing Zelensky to go on a peace agreement. Seems to me there are some signs of that. And again, firstly, I don't believe the Western media, so I'll reject that type of notion. And secondly, why would they do it? Well, they're running out of weapons. Yeah, that's another. But remember, if they want to focus on China, they need the support of the countries that are surrounding China, meaning Taiwan, Philippines, and Japan, and South Korea. But if they withdraw from Ukraine, like I said many times, then they lose faith and credibility. And these countries will ask themselves, but why will I fight a war against China when the Americans cannot support me to the extent that they are promising me? I cannot trust these people, so I'm not going to do it. But in any case, so that's one thing. So now Biden was in Kiev, and now the narrative rolls around, yeah, but they might withdraw the financing, but then Biden promised again $500 million worth of armament and ammunition. And if you listen to Borrell, he says that the European military complex must mobilize into a wartime and increase their production. And then everybody is telling, oh, we're going to buy the F-35s and weapons and so on from America. And in the meantime, I read this article about the company that, well, the conglomerate, if you want to call it, that is manufacturing the Eurofighter, the Tornado. And he's not getting orders. Although he's geared for making orders and expanding, but he's not getting orders. And then we hear that Leopard 2s are not really available, but Germany is going to send more than 88 Leopard 1s, and in total it's going to be like 170 tanks that's going to be provided to Ukraine, but not immediately. It's going to take a time. So one has to ask yourself, but what the hell is really going on? It's so confusing and conflicting information. So I don't know what to believe anymore. But in my opinion, NATO cannot abandon Ukraine. They have to put up a production of military equipment, the military industrial complex. They have to upgrade it. They need the ammunition. Well, there was a rumor that America basically went to Ukraine to teach the Kiev, hey, listen here, you don't need to fire 6,000 rounds a day. Be a little bit more optimistic and choose your targets more carefully. Remember that German PZ-2000, that self-propelled howitzer from Germany? It was breaking down because it was designed to fire 100 rounds, 100 rounds of 155 millimeter projectiles per day. 100. And the Ukrainians were abusing it, and that's why it sort of broke down. Well, you have to target correctly. Anybody of us has seen all these pictures of UIVs of the battlefield, and you see the whole field is full of pocket holes where the artillery has fallen, but it's not near the trenches. It's like, how many of these 155s or the Russians 152 millimeter rounds have been wasted? And I believe a hell of a lot. More than 60% of the artillery rounds were actually wasted. So if you want to be in a war, and you have to be a little bit more cautious and calculating. So neither the Russians, neither the Ukrainians need to fire that amount of rounds or consume it. And I'm fairly sure the pressure is on Russia as well, keeping up with the demand or the usage. You know, one day it was 60,000 rounds a day. Then I heard again it was 40,000 rounds a day. No. No. I don't know. It's like, so, yeah, before I get to this point, before I get to the other section of this video. So again, Biden went there, and now Zelensky is afraid that he will lose the support of the Republicans and so on in the House. Or yeah, I think they're in control of the House. Yeah. But in any case, they will try to cut the funding to Zelensky and so on. And Biden was there to tell Zelensky, listen, boyki, we want to see some actions. You better obtain some ground and show us that you can do it. That's the narrative. But I believe it's total bullshit. The amount of weapons that the West and NATO gives to Ukraine is in no way anything near enough to support any offensive or counter-offense. It is barely sufficient to hold the line against an attack of the Russians. Why? Because you can take these weapons and you basically can entrench them, hide them, or fortify them. That's a better word. So if the Russians would progress and do an attack, an offense on these positions, then those positions, well, they will be able to defend their positions against the Russian hordes, if you want to call it. That is where the weapons should be going. But now everybody says, but the Ukrainians are going to have to fight, and they have to gain ground, and they have to do counteroffensive, and they have to enter Mariupol and Crimea, and what the hell? The weapons are not there enough to do this. They are enough to be defensive. And now there was this RAND report that said, yeah, a long war with Russia is not going to benefit the Americans. Why not? Because of the economic problems in Europe? No, yeah, but that is something separately. They can solve it by separate ways, but military is one aspect of the war, and economic problems, yes, they are semi-interlinked, but they are also separate. That is why they give them so much, a little weapons, and they give it Piecewise, 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 small little bit, just enough to keep the defense going and prolong the war, and hope the Russians don't start with their big offensive. Slowly, they are doing it. So it doesn't matter what they say, what they do, as always, different from what they say. And that means piecewise supply of weapons, ammunition, for defensive line, for delay the attack of the Russians. That is what they are doing. Now we can look at Bakhmut, and you know, when you hear the pro-Russians or any comments about Bakhmut, it's always the Wagner group. It seems to me the Wagner group is the only soldiers that are actually fighting in this war. Because you only hear about the Wagner group. Wagner, PCM Wagner, PC Wagner, whatever. No, I'm not discrediting them, make no mistake. But that's the only action that's really happening. Yes, there are some skirmishes on the south side, sub-regional. Yes, there are ones in the north and so on. But that's what's happening. So they say that Bakhmut is important for the Russians. And they say, the Ukrainians say that Bakhmut is important for the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are sacrificing men by the thousands on defense of Bakhmut. I cannot see this. I'm sorry. No commander can be that stupid. Nobody can put his limited manpower, limited equipment in constant danger of being destroyed with no possible gains. So what I believe is happening there, contrary to through all the reports, is that, again, the Ukrainians, Bakhmut is defined as the third last line of defense, fortification for the Ukrainians. If the Russians break through, then the whole defense collapses. That's the common narrative. So if I was a commander of the Ukrainians again, I would have tried to delay the conquering of Bakhmut by the Russians, while I, in the meantime, build new fortifications in the rear of Bakhmut. So should the Russians conquer Bakhmut, then I have at least some pre-prepared defensive lines. And I'm sure that is what the Ukrainians are doing. In the last 3 weeks or so, I've said many times, I don't believe in a daily Russian military report anymore. No, to very few tanks were actually destroyed. Now, the narrative might go as, oh, the Ukrainians are running out of tanks. No. They withdrew their tanks into defensive positions, pre-prepared, because everybody knows Bakhmut is gone. It's just a saving of time. No. A delay actions in order for the Ukrainians to prepare the new fortifications and a new line. And all those tanks are there. And the APCs or whatever goes with that, the heavy metal. All right, so that's just, so I don't know. Let me talk about why would Ukraine in any case try to gain ground? They are losing ground in Liman Izium type of direction there around there. The Russians. And the Russians are winning ground 50 meters by 50 meters a day. Why would the Russians? I thought they are not based on territory. They are now fighting a war of attrition. I mean, the military duels, artillery duels, infantry duels, tank duels, that type of thing. You know, testing it out, destroying each other. So the only advance that the Russians really are doing is to get a certain positional advantage. You know, having a higher ground or a better position or a better supply line, or that is basically what they want to do. But again, I don't understand. I watch the maps and so on, and you have this huge fortified Bakhmut. You're fighting there for 6 months. You're wasting ammunition and hardware and manpower on it. Why do you even attack it? Why not go around it? Why not cut off the supply lines and then surround it like Mariupol? Why are the Russians front attacking Bakhmut? Yes, they have now went to the northern side and now they're slowly encircling that, but they could have done it a long time ago. I don't understand that. It's again, what happened to the Lehman counteroffensive from the Ukraine? So these guys they attacked the Russian line. The Russian line was not properly defended with the little manpower, and the Ukrainians got like 2,000 square kilometers or something like that. Huge amount of territory did they recover. Why? Because it was open fields and towns not defended, towns very small, sparsely distributed. So it was like running over the open steppes. Easy. So if I was the Russians, and remember, I'm not a commander, I don't know all the terrains, I don't know where the problems area are, but just looking at history, the Ukrainians ran over the open field, conquered 2,000, went deep into the territory of the Russian defenses. The Russians had to retreat a lot. So why not start with a counter-offensive there, run around and chase these Ukrainians back, and by doing that, you can encircle Bakhmut, go south and Kherson area, Zaporizhzhia, you can all do that on your way to Odessa. And in the meantime, you can attack. Apparently there is a force about, I think, 15 or 20,000 men with equipment north of Kharkiv in the Russian area. And then they can penetrate from north around Kharkiv and join up with the guys that penetrated in the Lehman Isium side. So, but it's all like frontal attack, and it's only weird Wagner groups. But now we are waiting for this Russian offense. And I've seen some articles and analysis, and I ask myself, yeah, it sounds all brilliant. Yeah, the guys know a lot of that. According to the Russian Federation has prepared 1,800 tanks, 3,950 armored vehicles, 2,700 artillery systems, 810 Soviet-era self-propelled guns, such as Grad and Smerch, and 400 fighter jets and 300 helicopters for the upcoming massive attack on Ukraine. This was written by the Foreign Policy. Yo, if you look at these numbers, then no, this is going to be a slaughter. Apparently, these aircrafts are not far from the Ukrainian border, and the Russians are now going to change the tactic and use their aviation in this offensive and bombard the crap out of the Ukrainians, even if they have to sacrifice some fighters and so on, some jets and helicopters. Well, we're waiting for this in the winter. Winter didn't happen. So yesterday we had the big speech of Putin to the Duma. Well, his speech was mostly concerned about domestic issues and a little bit of foreign issues like the war and so on. And the West is critical. The same critics he always says. And then we had today the meeting of the Duma to sign off on his not withdrawal. He didn't withdraw it. He suspended the START treaty. That's right. And that's it. No big announcement. No announcement of an offense. Things haven't started. Today is the 22nd. Friday is the 24th of the anniversary. I would like to ask any idiot or any sane general, why would you attack your enemy on a specific date that has some connotation to it, like the 24th of February is the anniversary of the SMO? Why would you do that? Why would you select a day like that, or select a holiday, or select Christmas, or select when some other prominent person has died or achieved? No, you attack when the conditions are right. When you have decided that's it, and you have been given the order to exercise it. So again, I'm waiting for. I'm reading all these analysis about the big offense that Russia is now going to launch, but we all are still waiting. And again, you know, why should Russia do it? According to the top guys, this war is still going to carry on for until next year or the year after it. Nobody's really planning and finishing it now. And if you start with this SMO, then you start rolling, and then there is no stoppage until you reach Kiev. And that is how it's going to work. So I'm not totally sure why. They're still busy with their war of attrition. They are quite happy of doing it. It's like in the Second World War, the First World War. How did it end? It ended in France, not in Germany. It ended because the German army was exhausted. No more manpower, or very little manpower, very little ammunition, low morale. They were basically defeated. And maybe that's the same principle that the Russians are for. No big offensive. They're just going to hammer the Ukrainians, till they are totally exhausted, destroyed, no more equipment, no more means of defending. Whatever they do, they're gone. And hopefully then they will have an amnesty. And well, isn't that one of the stated goals of the SMO? Destruction of Ukrainian army? Yes, it is. So again, there's really no need for this, except, and I will discuss the different video on what is really going to happen there. So again, I read and see all this narrative, but it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So basically, I cannot agree with most of that. It sounds impressive. Really, some of these guys' articles are impressive. Make no mistake in that. But I sometimes found out that it's like with the Seymour Hersh story. Then the guys say they debunked Seymour Hersh stories because what about Liz Truss's message? So they want to build a case on that. But that message was very dubious. It was, I think, published by Kim.com on a server that he found. No, doesn't have much credibility. Any case, that's my story for today. I thought I would make some clarification, but I think I made you more confused than what you were before you started the video. Sorry for that. Any case, that's my story. You subscribe if you like what you heard, subscribe if you haven't, tell your friends if you haven't. Let us grow the channel. Let's see what we can do about it. And until next time, cheers.